Hello and welcome. I am Scrapperlock, and this is City of Heroes on the Rebirth server. We are with Quintessence last, our level 39, almost level 40 character with 8.3 million XP earned and 66,000 to go to get to level 40. 33 million influence earned, and we're on a story arc for Ginger Yates, and we're doing the Devouring Earth. This is the what is it called? The Terra Conspiracy storyline. Tanya Tyler's been kidnapped again, and she says, I've got a lead for you, Quintessence last. Some businessmen over in Founders Falls said they saw one matching Tanya's description being dragged into a cave by a bunch of Devouring Earth. I want you to get over there and stop them. I think there are a couple more missions left because the last one is an outdoor mission, and so being in a cave is obviously not an outdoor mission. So off we go. So one comment I have mentioned before that we've had a few map server disconnects. They've tracked some of this down on the Rebirth server now, and just today made it, or yesterday made an announcement that they think they've. This is really bizarre. Tracked it down to when someone does a costume change in a trial or a task force. They specifically said trials. But I think what's going on here is I don't think a trial has anything to do with it. Logically, it shouldn't. I think what may be happening is that the server somehow crashes when somebody does a costume change with their character and other clients. Maybe a large number of other clients are present to see it. And it has to somehow render the costume change for all these different users, and then, I don't know, something blows up. That's what it seems like. As a matter of kind of safety for the server, then I haven't been doing it anyway. We're not going to change costumes with this character at all until this problem is resolved. So we'll just stick with our existing costume. Last time I changed anything, what I basically did was just added a cape. And we've had our cape ever since level 22 or something. Okay, so here we are. Tracking down Tanya Tyler. I don't know if we're going to be able to rescue her. I know at some point she is, in fact, going to be taken to a city. We're on +2 times 1 still because of the size of the Devouring Earth and how hard it is, for me at least, to see what the heck is going on when these giant guys are surrounding me. And just also the amount of time it takes to take out their spawns and dealing with multiple guys that are putting down pets that just make it very complicated, and then all the extra rubbles that show up, it just gets too crowded and too nasty, and so we're just going to stay on ×1. It's a little easy, but I think we're going to get to fight an elite boss shortly. I think that's true. Maybe it's a boss. I can't remember. I think it's an elite boss, and so that should be pretty interesting. And then when we get into our level 40 stories, depending on which enemies we do, we may be able to move back to ×2. We should be able to move back to ×2. And we may be able to move back to ×3, depending. We're going to do a little at a time. This character's been doing fine on ×2 for a while, for a little while, and I think outside of the Guardians, we would do fine on ×2 with the Devouring Earth as well. So I think we can go back to ×2 once we're done with this story arc and we're into the 40s. So after this arc is done, which may happen this episode, I'm going to be looking to get to another story arc before I bring you guys back. So I will we'll finish this story arc, and then we will I'll see you again when we have another story arc ready to go, and I won't show you the stuff in between because it's really not worth recording. So the cairns, they're a bit of a problem, but they're not so bad when you're just fighting a single sentry. Because of the Fury, because we just keep building and doing so much damage, it's fairly easy to do enough damage, and because we're doing negative with a lot of our abilities, or half negative and half smashing, we do enough damage to them that, unlike our smashing and lethal characters, Silver Phoenix and Tiger Strike, it's actually not so bad to go after the sentries while the cairn is still on the ground. Now, what you don't want, and one of the things that I struggled with in, I think, the previous episode, is you don't want 2 or 3 cairns on the ground, which is what happens when you have multiple spawns or when you have really large spawns, right? Because then their resistance stacks, and um, you end up with, now you're doing hardly any of the smashing damage at all. I don't think it protects them from negative no matter what, though. So as we go, let's talk a little bit more about role-playing games. I think I have covered this a little bit, but this came up in the D&D Beyond forum where somebody was talking about, well, it was a player, and the complaint he made is that, gosh, our battles take forever. He said we've been doing the same small dungeon for 3 sessions. Now, it's hard to know how big the dungeon was. I mean, sometimes my group spends 3 or more sessions on a single dungeon. I have no problem with that. He said we spent 3 or 4 sessions on the same dungeon. Battles take forever. And what can make it go faster? And he didn't really say why the battles took forever, but one of the more experienced DMs, I guess, figured it out. He said, well, do you guys spend a lot of time arguing rules in the middle of a battle? And the player said, yeah. Sometimes it'll take 20 or 30 minutes on one guy's turn because they're arguing rules. So then I wrote back and said, no, right? Do not ever argue rules in the middle of a session. And then he said, well, we recognize that, but almost like we kind of can't stop. You need to not argue rules when you're in the middle of a session. And I've said this before. And you don't. This isn't to say that the DM is always right, objectively right about how the rules are supposed to be interpreted based on the writing of the rule book. But at the moment, in a battle, in the session, once the DM makes a ruling, that's it, and he is right for that moment, for that session, for that adventure right now. This is how we're going to play it. It has to be that way, and the reason is that if it's not, what happens is you have this 4-hour session. If you're lucky, you play once a week for 4 hours, if you're really lucky. Some people maybe play once every other week for 3 hours, and that's all the D&D they get in a 2-week period is 3 hours of it. You do not want to waste half an hour of the 3 hours arguing about the effects of a single spell in one round of battle. It's just not worth it. You want to move on. You want to play the game, not argue the rules. So the way to do this is to, ask about it, sure. The GM tells you how they're ruling in the game. It doesn't have to be D&D. It could be Champions. It could be anything. If you don't agree, you could say, look, the rules actually say this on page 95. If the GM says no, we're doing it this way, that's it. And I'm going to actually refer to Critical Role here. I haven't watched it in a long time, but probably 6-8 months ago, when I was still watching it, there was an episode, and I have no idea which episode it was. I wish I could remember which one, because I'd like to refer to it by episode and even by timestamp, so that I could say to people, go to this timestamp and watch. This is the right way to handle it. So Liam, who plays a wizard named Caleb, he wanted to do something or other. He asked for a ruling from Matt Mercer, who is the GM, and Matt said, no, you can't do that, or this is how it works. Liam didn't agree. And what he said was, I don't think that's actually how that's supposed to be done, but we'll talk about it afterwards, right? In other words, we'll do it this way. Let's do it this way for now. I'm not going to argue, but I want to let you know that I'd like to discuss it afterwards. And Matt said, that's fine. And I guess they talked about it afterwards. I have no idea. But that is the way to handle it, right? You say to the GM, look, I don't agree with this ruling, but I'll go with it for now, right? I'm not going to fight with you about it now, but I do want to talk about it later. And then when you guys have time in between sessions, you get together, you open up the rule book, you talk about it, you explain to the GM what your reasoning is, why you think that their ruling doesn't agree with what it actually says on the pages of the rule book, and that it's supposed to work this way. And outside of that very tense situation of being in the middle of the session and the GM having to adjudicate like friggin' everything, when it's quieter and calmer and they're just sitting there looking at the book, the GM can make a more objective, fair, and possibly favorable to you evaluation. But if you're going to challenge the GM in the middle of a session, when they're trying to run the whole thing and run a battle and they got 5 NPCs to worry about and they're trying to do everything, they're not going to be amenable to rethinking their interpretation of the rules at that moment. And even if they were, stopping the game to bog everything down for everyone while you argue about the rules with the GM means nobody's playing D&D, right? Arguing the rules is not playing D&D. Arguing the rules is not playing Champions. It's arguing the rules. You can do that outside of the game. The time we spend in the session with each other, actually role-playing, actually fighting combat, actually playing the game is so precious. You don't want to give that up just to win an argument, right? It's not worth it. Just play the game. Go with whatever ruling the GM has come up with and discuss, and we've leveled up, discuss the situation later when you and the game master have time to sit down and calmly talk about it outside of the confines of what's happening right now in this particular session, in this particular battle, in this particular scene. Okay, so you should always, always, always defer to the GM. Again, I'm not saying the GM is always factually right about the rules. What I'm saying is you don't want to fight with the GM. You don't want to argue with the GM in the middle of a session. Just like if you and your guild a bunch of you get together as a team and go run a task force in City of Heroes, you don't want to interrupt that task force by having a big, long, convoluted discussion about the guild politics, right? And stop everybody from playing while you guys are typing away in team chat, arguing over like when the next set of guild leader elections should be or something like that. Don't do that outside of the game. Don't stop the task force for everyone to have this argument. That's no good. That's taking the playtime away from yourself and everybody else. So really, always remember that the playtime you get at the table, in the Zoom, in the mission with your friends is precious time. You only get a little of it every week, unless you're super, super lucky. You may get 3 or 4 hours a week. I get max 4 hours every 2 weeks. You don't want to spend half an hour of that arguing over some silly, trivial, esoteric point of the rule book, when if you had stopped arguing, you would have been out of this battle and on to the next part of the adventure already. So, yeah, and a lot of it seems to hinge on, both for the GM and the player, wanting to be right. And it doesn't matter who's right. You do want to play the rules either correctly or at least the way your house rules have been determined to be. But, and there's Tanya, but you also, it doesn't matter if it's technically not the way the rules are written, or even technically not the way your house rules are written. Just go with it for this particular scene, and then talk about how it should be done in the future later. Alright, we have rescued Tanya again, but she's green. She's turning green. Too bad she faded right away, because she was turning a little bit green there. She's becoming a Devouring Earth. Uh-oh. Okay, so let's talk to our contact. So, we were right. Hamadon is trying to turn Tanya into some sort of Devouring Earth breeder. I'll get her over to the lab right away. Maybe they can help her. Bad news, the doctors weren't able to help Tanya change, and before the change took place, she turned into a monster before their eyes. I need you to track her down and defeat her before she breeds. And I believe this is the final mission of the story arc. So this is perfect. We get 2 missions done tonight, and then we will, we also have to level up. And we are right here in Williams Square, so we'll go ahead and find, what is it, Infernal, and level up. And we are level 40, guys. Finish Midnight Grasp. I think we're going to add a health to energize, a heal to energize. So Midnight Grasp needs 3 damage. So I'm going to pause it here while I see if I can craft a couple of those up and a heal, or maybe find one in my base because I might have a couple left. And I will bring you back when we're ready to board the train and rescue Tanya, or at least defeat her. Alright folks, we are back. We now have fully slotted Midnight Grasp with 1 accuracy, 1 recharge, 1 endurance, 3 damage, and it now does 207 damage per hit compared to Shadow Maul doing 160. Now Shadow Maul's an AoE, so if we hit 2 guys, we're doing 320 damage to the 2 of them, so it's still better, but against a single target, Midnight Grasp is our bread and butter. We also now can heal 138%. Sorry, we can now heal 471. Our recharge rate is 138%. We can heal 471 hit points per shot, and our character has 395. So once we've doubled it, we'll be healing like half of our hit point bar per heal, which we can do about every minute. So that's really cool. So we should be in good shape. We've got actually extra enhancement inspiration slots. I didn't take any more inspirations. I don't know that we're going to need them. I think we're probably going to be fine since we can self-heal and heal up our endurance and stuff. So we need to track down and take out Tanya. So I'm going to go where I have found her before and see if we can find her there. Just, quickly. She's usually over here by the garage. And there she is. Alright, so we're going to want to sweep the area. There's also usually like this powerful looking, cool looking mutated thing somewhere around here. And I've forgotten to defeat it both times, I think. No, I don't see it. So I don't know how far out we're going to have to sweep to take out, to be acknowledged to have defeated Tanya, but we're definitely going to want to get rid of these guys if we can, and we're going to want to get rid of these guys. So let's go ahead and take them out first. And then we're going to head around to the other side and take out the other guys. This should be +2. It must be that this caps out at level 40, so it can't go above level 41. Don't know. You guys can come here. We didn't get Tanya because she's not part of that spawn. So if she's purple, she must be an EB. Yeah, she's an elite boss. So this is our first elite boss in a while. She's a +1 elite boss, so she really shouldn't be hard at all. We do have our panic power we can use. I'm going to start without it. Just using 1 of each inspiration. And we're going to come in and soul drain these guys, and then we're going to ignore them because they can't do anything to us. They're yellow cons, and we're going to go after her. And what we want to do is pound her as much as we can to get her to miss us. So we can't floor her, but we can drop her to hit down to like 30% or so, which should be enough to not be constantly smacked around by her. I'm surprised this, what is it, Black Rose isn't attacking me. As you can see, we don't need our panic power. Our defense is high enough that she's not going to be able to hit us. Now she does have a sort of like an Omega Strike where she throws out some nasty stuff at the end, but we managed to defeat her anyway. And that completes the mission, guys. We have got reward merits and finished the story arc. We got only 19 reward merits, however, so that means that if we look, We only have 88. We need, I think, 150, so we still have a ways to go before we can get our last touch of the Nictus enhancement for our set. Wow, it looks so much more spacious on our inspiration bar. Alright, we have finished this, so we're going to head out. And now we're going to get a bunch more experience as we talk to Ginger Yates. And she says, I know this feels like failure Quintessence last, but you have to remember we stopped an ecological fiasco. Tanya will be taken to a laboratory if there's any hope for her. I'm sure the doctors will find it. As for you, you can be glad that you caught her in time. If Terra had bred more of her kind, we would never have gotten the Devouring Earth under control. They might eventually have accomplished their goal of ridding the world of humanity. And that was actually the goal of my character Biome, who was a Plantthorn Dominator Devouring Earth back during live play. Alright folks, I know this is a short episode, but we're done with that story arc, and I'm going to have to kind of farm the contacts a little bit to get into our next story arc, so I will bring you back in the next story arc. Until then, I am Scrapperlock, and this is City of Heroes on the Rebirth server.